Hey everyone, it's Steven. Today I have the redesigned 2025 Toyota Camry SE. This is the best-selling sedan in America, by a long shot too, and it's been a nameplate in America for over 40 years at this point, so pretty sure everyone knows what a Camry is, right? It was my first vehicle, probably a lot of other people's first vehicles as well. And Toyota's done some good things to keep their best-selling vehicle, or at least best-selling sedan, hot and fresh. So the Camry is Toyota's offering in the mid-size sedan segment, which is a bit of a dying segment in America, unfortunately, but the Camry still moves some impressive units. And I mean, people who have driven one, I think you guys will understand why, right? You've got legendary Toyota reliability, decent looks, especially this new 9th generation one, and just an overall pleasant drive, right? I think that's what a lot of people want in their car, in their appliance. They don't really want it to be anything special. They just want a nice vehicle that they can drive around in, commute, all that sort of good stuff. So obviously, since the Camry is such an important vehicle to Toyota, they definitely wanted to redesign it for a new generation. Like I said, this is the 9th generation of the nameplate in the US here. And you can see they've done quite a few things to the exterior. You've got a new front fascia that looks very, very different and more modern, more sleek. The interior gets some nice upgrades as well. You've got a new infotainment system and a new screen. Unfortunately, it's not as big as the competitors, but still definitely brings it to the modern era. And I mean, I don't think the Camry needs any help selling more units, honestly. So the biggest change in the 2025 redesigned Camry is going to be its engine. So you've got a hybrid exclusive lineup now. So every single trim of the Toyota Camry has a hybrid engine. It gives you really nice fuel economy numbers, up to 50 miles per gallon, which is pretty absurd. So I mean, Toyota's kind of leaning into the fact that they know that this car isn't exactly known for its engine, right? It's just known for being a nice vehicle to drive, and people want fuel economy, right? People are really into that if they're not looking for a sports car. If they just want a commuter, fuel economy is kind of king, and the Camry continues to do that very, very well. So as you can imagine, with the new engine lineup being fully hybrid, this vehicle does have a higher starting price than the previous model generation. So now it starts at almost $30,000. That's kind of absurd for a base trim Camry. The base trim is called the LE. You've got the SE, which is a step up, which is this one here. Gets you some sporty elements like those nice 18-inch blacked out wheels, and of course some things like the spoiler, the rear diffuser, and you've got those cool canards at the front with what they call racing-inspired air curtains, which is pretty cool. But yeah, you'll notice all the black trim. It does look really nice in my opinion. I think the SE trim is kind of the one to get. That one starts a little bit above $30,000. As tested, the one I have here is about $33,000, which honestly sounds like so much for a Camry, but these days, car prices are just insane, right? New car prices starting almost $30,000, which is pretty crazy for a Camry that, I mean, like 10 years ago was low 20,000s. So it's kind of crazy how expensive new cars have gotten. But I mean, I think this is still a very, very compelling vehicle to get, especially for most people in America. So the engine you get now is a 2.5 liter inline 4-cylinder. Gone is the V6 from the previous generation. Unfortunately, that one had more than 300 horsepower, which honestly made the Camry a pretty fun vehicle to drive. This one I wouldn't say is not fun though. You've got the Sport Tune suspension on the SE trim, and you've got 225 horsepower, and well, actually 232 on the all-wheel drive variant, which this one is. And Toyota doesn't publish the torque figures, unfortunately, but it's no slouch. It goes 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds. It's not fast, but it's still plenty quick for getting up to freeway speeds. All-wheel drive is an optional $1,525. Otherwise, this comes standard with front-wheel drive. Gets you slightly better fuel economy numbers, closer to that 50 number I mentioned before. This one here gets 46 combined miles per gallon as the all-wheel drive option. And these fuel economy numbers are pretty much in line with most of the other large competitors, such as the Honda Accord, the Hyundai Sonata, the Nissan Altima, the sea of mid-size sedans out there that are kind of dying off, honestly, but Toyota's still definitely going strong. All right, let's talk about the exterior of this beautiful car. I honestly love this color. It is called Reservoir Blue. It is a no-cost option, which is pretty neat, and it's kind of like a midnight blue. And I mean, right now in the sunset, you can see it's a very gorgeous color. I really, really like it, especially with the blacked out wheels and just the blacked out grille in general. I think it looks really good with that. I think the chrome wouldn't match it that well, but I really do like all of the blacked out features in the SE trim. So let's talk about the front fascia first. You've got the new Toyota badge. Well, you've got the new look of the Toyota badge, at least on their models. This one is a more luxurious silver decal so that it doesn't have that weird plastic look that the previous generation had. You also get this really cool sport mesh front fascia grille. I really like it. I think it looks very sporty, looks very nice. Like I said before, you got those racing-inspired air curtains, they said. You've got the canards down here as well. Definitely adds a kind of bold, sporty element. Probably not the most robust thing, honestly, but they look good. They don't look super flimsy. You've also got the new check mark lights here. So full LED daytime running lights. Looks good. I also really like that the turn signals actually kind of fade in and out, which is a thing that a ton of automakers are trying to do now. Makes it look a bit more luxurious and more special than your normal average mid-size sedan. All right, moving on to the side profile. I think this is also a very nice looking part, but I will say some people have noticed that the side profile doesn't look very different from the 8th generation Camry. I really think Toyota didn't want to change the formula too much. I mean, it's a winning formula, and this looks so similar to the 8th generation, honestly. Almost identical, I feel. It's on the same chassis and everything, so it's not exactly like they did that much with this redesign. Honestly, people would call it a heavy refresh if they wanted to. But you've got a lot of blacked out elements, right? You've got the black trim on the windows. I think that looks excellent. You've got the black trim on the side mirrors, and of course these beautiful 18-inch machine alloy wheels. They are blacked out, look very, very nice. I like the spokes, and I also do like that little silver brake caliper right there. It looks quite nice. Everything is body color painted, which is nice as well. You don't have any weird plastic trim along the fenders or anything like that, so it does look very cohesive. Side profile looks good, I think. Going to the rear profile here, this is basically almost looks identical to the 8th generation Camry, right? They spaced out the Camry lettering, which I do think looks a little bit more fancy. And you've got a nice spoiler as well, a body painted color spoiler. I think that looks really nice. And the taillights look very Lexus-like. I feel like they got a lot of inspiration from their more recent Lexus products, but it looks nice. You know, you've got that same kind of check mark design. You've got the badge for the trim, SE right there. You can always tell what trim Camrys are. I honestly really like when vehicles do that. It's very frustrating when you can't tell what trim a vehicle is just from a glance. You've also got the HEV with this little blue circle on every single Camry because they're all hybrid EVs now. You've also got a nice rear diffuser at the bottom. I'm not really sure how aerodynamic that actually is, but it looks nice. I think it really adds that cohesive sporty element for the SE trim. I really, really do think the SE trim is a fantastic value at $33,000. You also do get these nice sport tailpipes. So it's only one exhaust, but cool little dual tailpipe, I guess, right here. Definitely looks sportier than the normal Camry. And finally, going into the trunk here, you've got 15.1 cubic feet of cargo space. A little hard to find the place to open it. It's on the right-hand side there. But yeah, 15.1 cubic feet of cargo space is a little smaller than some competitors like the Honda Accord, but it's still plenty of space for you to put pretty much whatever you need. And I really just want to comment on how much I love all of the blacked out elements on this Camry, right? This really makes the Camry a much more interesting vehicle, right? It feels like a commoner's car, right? Like I think that's why people sometimes don't like the Camry, but this really does look like something special. I love the blacked out Camry lettering right there. It looks fantastic. And even the HEV badge looks very nice. The spoiler, everything is very cohesive. On the higher trims, you can actually get a really interesting dual tone piece on top so that you can get a different color, like a blacked out roof, essentially. It's a very, very interesting design. I think Toyota's done a great job keeping the Camry looking fresh and interesting. All right, what about the interior of the Camry? I think that's an area that needed some improvement for quite a while, so let's check out the interior. All right, let's take a look at the interior of the 2025 Toyota Camry SE. Still love this blue, especially in the golden hour here. All right, one thing I want to talk about is this key fob. Very, very cool that it says the word Camry on it. How cool is that, right? I don't know if the Corolla and Prius do that too, but I think that it makes this look very luxurious, right? How many vehicles do you actually get the model name on your vehicle, on your key fob? All right, one thing I don't like about this car is that you don't have keyless entry, which is very unfortunate. That is one of my favorite features. Having to take out my key feels a little ridiculous in this day and age, honestly, but you can get that as part of the package. I think it's like $600 for keyless entry. All right, interior cabin impressions are pretty positive, I would say. Let's go inside. It's pretty quiet inside. It's pretty isolated. It's generally a pretty nice interior, I would say. I think this is going to be more impressive to people than they expect from a Camry, right? If you've driven a Camry like 20 years ago or something like that, you're going to be pretty impressed with just how high quality newer cars are these days, honestly, in terms of both the modern tech and just the general appearance of interior cabins. You know, most car manufacturers have done very good jobs with their interior, and I think with this redesigned 9th generation, Toyota has done a great job as well. Keeping it kind of standard, right? You've got things like the traditional gear select, I think will make people very happy, but also keeping it modern with like a bigger screen and stuff like that. One thing you'll notice is that there's no engine hum, right? This vehicle is a hybrid, so you don't get any of that, which I think adds to that kind of premium feel of the vehicle. So you'll notice the infotainment system and everything looks very nice and revamped, looks modern. Apple CarPlay takes up the entire screen, it looks very good. I guess let's start talking about the screen first then. So this is going to be the 8-inch screen here. That's a little small compared to what you get in rivals these days, right? I feel like it should be at least standard like 10 inches or something like that. But it honestly gets the job done just fine. Everything is very snappy, very responsive. I will say that beep is very loud, and I haven't found a way to change how loud that is. But yeah, you've got all the settings right here, very simple, and like it's snappy. I think that's one of the biggest improvements is Toyota's old infotainment looked quite old, especially the font. I think this font is really much more modern and kind of brings this vehicle to the modern era. Otherwise, nothing really too notable about this, but it's a nice display. You can get an optional 12.3-inch display if you there's a package for it on the SE trim, or you can step up to one of the higher trims. Going to the other screen here, the engine just kicked on, but going into the other screen here, you've got a 7-inch LCD screen here. This one is actually kind of interesting because it, you know, it's small, but it's totally adequate in terms of everything you need to see, right? You've got all the display information on the corners here. You've got temperature, time, all that sort of good stuff. I really do need to fill up my gas. But you've also got your safety display stuff. So you've got blind spot monitor, lane departure, adaptive cruise control, all of it shows up right here. And I think this is a great screen, honestly, for the fact that it's not fully digital. Again, you can upgrade to a 12.3-inch digital display for the gauge cluster here. That is brand new for this generation of Camry. The old Camrys never offered that, which is pretty cool. So I think, you know, if you want the higher tech and the more modern feeling vehicle, you should probably get that package that steps up to that. All right, let's take a look at the steering wheel here. So I pushed my seat all the way back so that we have more space here. There's usually not this much space, but steering wheel is pretty nice, right? You've got a leather trimmed steering wheel. This is only available on the higher trim, so the LE, the base trim, gets a, you know, typical plastic steering wheel. Kind of boring looking, doesn't feel so great. This one is a nice leather trimmed one with some nice stitching on the inside as well. The actual buttons do look a little messy at first, right? You've got a lot of buttons. I think it's always a little overwhelming when there's extra buttons coming out, unless it's like, you know, a sport dial or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. The extra little piano black plastic sides, you have your media controls, right? So you can change the mode, you can skip track, and that's going to be your volume control. And on the left-hand side, you can go through the menus in the LCD screen right here. So one thing, you know, you'll probably notice very quickly is this screen is quite snappy, right? It's pretty fast. And I think that's impressive compared to a lot of other vehicle manufacturers, where I feel like this screen is kind of an afterthought if it's not fully digital. Like, you know, some of the older Hyundai Kia products, I feel like, you know, the screen just felt like an afterthought until they went fully digital. I like that Toyota actually improved this one a lot. I think this one looks nice and it's very functional, very quick. So if you want to change the settings there, you can use this, but again, the actual screen itself is not too configurable. That's kind of to be expected when it's not fully digital. Right-hand side, you've got your adaptive cruise control settings, so you've got your follow distance, lane departure, all that sort of good stuff. Steering wheel, perfectly fine. I do think a little clunky, but it's very usable. All right, let's talk about these actual seats. Okay, so this is pretty much a black on black sort of thing where you've got your interior basically fully in black with all the black trim, and you've got these seats that are also very black. You've got some nice white contrast inserts though, which I really love. I love the look of that, and they feel really nice. So these seats are called, or what Toyota calls Softex, which is their synthetic leather. Honestly, it feels fantastic. It does get a little hot, I would say, for longer car rides, but they feel really nice and they feel pretty much just like normal leather. You'd have some really interesting textures though. These are, it kind of feels like sandpaper almost. It's very, very interesting, but kind of difficult to clean, I would say. The headrests, I think, are really interesting because, I mean, while they look fine, I will say that the headrest is at a weird angle. I don't know. I feel like it kind of juts forward a little bit, and I feel like it's, I don't know. It wasn't that uncomfortable or anything, but it looks strange. You've got some nice white contrast stitching on the seats, which is really cool to see at such a, you know, low price point. And I love this little white insert here. It looks very, very sporty. And overall, these seats aren't trying to do anything special. They're just more interesting than the ones that you get in the base trim. The base trim gets cloth seats, so very, very standard economic car. This one is definitely more interesting. So if you can afford the like 2,000, 3,000 extra for the SE trim, I would highly recommend stepping up to that. It is a lot more interesting. It's a much more unique vehicle, and you get that sport tune suspension. All right, door panels, they look fine. Again, there's a lot of contrast material, which I think is always nice. You can kind of see the material on the trim is this very interesting, like, listen to that. It's a very weird, like, it's not very bouncy or anything, but it's almost like sandpaper. And I do want to point out that I love this design right here with the 4 lines that kind of go right into the vents. People really like doing that these days. A lot of car manufacturers are doing that. This is definitely a fingerprint magnet, as you can see the piano black there, so you just have to keep that clean, but it looks quite nice. Otherwise, the door panel, like I said, nothing too interesting. You've got that nice aluminum streak that goes across, and then you've got some contrasting soft touch leather, and then mostly plastic material here. No interesting speaker grill or anything like that. This is a 6-speaker system. Sounds absolutely fine. I will say that for those of you who haven't been in a more modern car, it might impress you, because I feel like modern cars just have really nice sound systems for their bass trims these days. You can upgrade to a JBL trim on the JBL speaker system on the higher trims. Otherwise, yeah, door panel, very standard. All right, going into the center stack right here, this is a very positive thing, I would say, is that you've got all physical air conditioning controls, which I really like. I think a lot of people want that these days, and these are very clicky. They feel high quality. They feel better than what you would think in a Toyota product, and I think that's what Toyota does so well, is things just feel pretty nice, right? Like, everything is pretty okay. You don't really complain about any of it. It all works exactly the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to be reliable, easy to use, kind of just a plug-and-play car. You've got push to start, of course, and like I said, you do have these nice vent designs here. One thing I want to note here is I love this texture right here. It is so unique, and I'm so glad that Toyota does this on this vehicle, because it really makes, it's the small things that really stand out, at least to me personally. I don't know how much most people would appreciate it, but I think that's a very cool design choice that, you know, someone put some thought into. You've got USB-A and USB-C, kind of nice because most manufacturers are getting rid of USB-A ports these days. And you've got a nice rubber mat. This is a wireless Qi charging pad. It is standard across every trim level, which is awesome, and it works super well. Whenever I was taking turns, curves, my phone never slid out and like stopped charging. So I love that. This vehicle does come standard with wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. Standard across every trim. Very, very cool. I hope we've gotten to the point as a society where that's just pretty much standard on every vehicle. So that is awesome to see. And like I said before, this is something that is very controversial with other vehicles, but I think people will like on this vehicle. You've got a standard gear select. So, you know, very easy to use, just goes forward and back. Nothing weird about it. You've got some nice buttons here, though I will say it is kind of strange to have your drive modes on a button. Sport doesn't really do too much, honestly. I don't know how many people will be sticking to it. The Sport Tune suspension already does feel quite good to drive with. The handling is pretty adept. Otherwise, you've got your typical drive modes. You've got an auto hold function, which is nice for hills. EV mode allows you to go fully EV, but very low speed and very small distances. You've got an e-brake here as well. 2 standard water cup holders. All right, your center stack here actually has some very nice storage. It's much deeper and larger than you would expect from a Camry. Honestly, these days, vehicles are pretty huge. Camrys are quite large. One thing I want to note down here in the footwell is you've got these very interesting Swiss cheese style aluminum pedals, which I think look very nice. All right, and now I'm going to move this seat up. So the cool part is the driver's seat with the SE trim does have an 8-way adjustable seat, power adjustable. So that's always kind of nice. Not every vehicle has that these days, and feels quite luxurious. And you've got some lumbar support things, you know, pretty typical for 8-way. Unfortunately, the passenger side does not get that, so that is still going to be all manual controls. One thing to note is that you don't have a memory button for your seat controls. So unfortunately, I have no idea where I was before, but that's usually fine for most people, I would say. All right, so getting out of the vehicle here. One thing I do want to note before I go into the rear seat is that you can get some pretty neat things like a door sill decal that shows Camry and I think lights up as well. So there are ways to kind of deck out your Camry if you want to make it seem more unique and like a more luxurious vehicle. I also do want to note that this car comes with a lot of cool standard safety features like blind spot monitors, rear cross traffic alert, of course a rear view camera, no front or rear parking sensors, which is a bit of a disappointment, but honestly this car is not too big and it's pretty easy to maneuver. All right, going into the rear seats, this is definitely an important part of the vehicle because this has kind of been the reigning king of family sedans, although that is definitely dying out in favor of the RAV4. All right, rear seats, really not the most interesting part of the vehicle. You've got some air vents here. Nothing looks that nice, honestly. The seats do have this nice insert again, so that's kind of a neat look. You also do have some white contrast stitching as well, but the door panels, you'll notice they kind of skimped out on because they don't have the cool texture. All of this is just going to be pretty boring plastic, so nothing too interesting there, but again, most manufacturers do that anyways. But yeah, I think it looks fine. I love the contrasting white, and I mean, they're perfectly comfortable. You got the same soft text material, you got a very usable center armrest right here, some more cup holders. Everything's pretty nice. Legroom and headroom are decent, I would say. Vehicles, again, are just so much bigger these days, and like this is probably with my normal driving position. I've got some legroom. It's not fantastic, but it's definitely not bad. You don't have a sunroof or a pano sunroof or anything like that. You can get that on the higher trims, and I believe you can also option that in the SE trim as well, but it is part of the package. Same with heated steering wheel and heated seats. I believe that's also part of the package, and this one doesn't have any of that, very bare bones. But yeah, headroom is decent. It definitely doesn't feel too confined as a 5'8", but you know, definitely taller passengers could start brushing up against the top here. And without the sunroof, it does feel slightly claustrophobic, but you will notice, at least one thing I really noticed was these huge windows, right? Like, look how big that is. I think it looks very, very nice and kind of gives a lot of visibility into the vehicle and out of the vehicle. So I'm guessing with the pano sunroof, this vehicle would feel very, very airy. All right, welcome to the driving impressions portion of my review of the 2025 Toyota Camry SE. So I'm going to keep this pretty brief. There's not too much to talk about, honestly, in terms of driving impressions. It's not the most sporty vehicle, it's not the most quiet or comfortable vehicle, but it's perfectly adequate in every category. All right, so in general, driving is pretty nice, I would say. I would say it's above average in terms of what you come to expect with some of these economy vehicles. This Camry drives very nice. It's smooth, steering is light, handling is quite nice, especially because of the, I'm guessing, the Sport Tune suspension from the SE trim. The handling feels pretty nice. It's an agile vehicle. It feels easy to maneuver around corners. It doesn't feel big at all, even though the Camry is pretty large these days. The hybrid drivetrain is pretty nice. The eCVT is great. I don't think anyone will complain about it. You don't have nice shifts or anything like that, but it's very smooth. It comes to a halt, it accelerates, smooth. 0 to 60 in 7 seconds obviously isn't the greatest, but I don't think anyone's buying a Camry to go super fast. I will say the V6 was definitely more peppy in the 8th generation Camry, but this one is perfectly adequate. I actually think I would compliment the hybrid drivetrain. It is very nice. I think Toyota's done a great job. Obviously, they probably put a lot of R&D money into this just to make sure that it's a success, since this is one of their biggest bread earners. So overall, I think this vehicle presents a pretty great value, honestly. $33,000, especially for the SE trim, gets you all-wheel drive, a very nice drivetrain, some really interesting premium interior materials that you really don't see much in this segment. I think every manufacturer is trying to differentiate themselves in ways now, but I think Toyota keeps it pretty safe. There's obviously a very fine line between bold statements, which I think is where the Koreans are at, right? You've got the Hyundai Sonata, which, I mean, I love the looks of it and I love the technology in those vehicles, but no one can say that it has the same brand reliability and prestige as the Toyota Camry, right? This nameplate's been around for 40 years. It's, you know, it was my first vehicle. It's a very nostalgic vehicle to drive, I think, and the driving experience is just still very good. Like, there's nothing to complain about. And you get the reliability and you get the fuel economy, right? Those are two of the biggest things, if not the biggest things, people look for when they're buying a new vehicle. Does it make sense as a good purchase? Because is it reliable? Will it last for 20 years? And, you know, Toyota, right? And is it going to get me good fuel economy? If it's a commuter vehicle for my family, am I going to get good mileage on it, right? A lot of people don't care about the driving dynamics and all that sort of stuff. They just want a vehicle that works, plug and play, it does the job, and that's what the Camry is for, right? It's the king of the midsize sedan segments by a long shot, and I think it's just such a great vehicle, and I think Toyota kept the winning formula while innovating, and I think that's kind of a tough balance to strike sometimes. And I do also want to point out how quiet the cabin is. I think that's one thing that really surprised me. At freeway speeds, it wasn't that loud. You could have a conversation, which is very unique, especially at this kind of price point for vehicles these days. Toyota did mention that they added this acoustic deadening windshield glass. So not on the sides, I think that's only on the higher trims, but yeah, it definitely kept kind of the wind noise to a minimum. I would say the general ride quality is fine. Like, all of it's just fine, but I will say the sound isolation in this vehicle is pretty top notch, especially for this price point. So overall, I would definitely recommend this 9th generation Toyota Camry. I think Toyota continues to do a great job with it. If you really value that sort of, reliability above everything else, I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all. So if you really just want a reliable vehicle that's been around for generations, literally, and you want a great fuel economy and a pretty nice drivetrain and just an overall pleasant driving experience, something that you can count on for your family, I really think nothing else beats the Toyota Camry. If you want to check out some of my other reviews, you can click up here and subscribe down here, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.